Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much, IHR, for the invite and inviting us to come and talk to you today. We are here to talk about growing numbers in a shrinking market. So evidently there's lots of conversations about the challenges we've had and lots of the situations, be it economic, political, circumstantial. So as introduced, I'm Head of Planning for SMRS. For those of you that don't know us, we are an employer marketing business, and we work with about 45 or so organisations on their employer brand or their future talent strategies, as well as their attraction. I wanted to Claire will introduce Teach First shortly, but we've worked together for about 2 years, both on their future talent and their graduate attraction strategies. And what we wanted to sort of talk about today is not just necessarily a case study of Teach First, but to sort of cement what we believe to be some of the more important aspects of a successful future talent strategy or grad strategy. And really, we wanted to sort of talk about the importance of culture and values in your organisations. So effectively, how do we, in the market we're in, how do we make sure we articulate those carefully, that they're clear to the audiences, and find the right channels to use them? Because fundamentally, they are important, and they're going to become more important. So I wanted to start really negatively, actually, and actually summarise all of our challenges, because interesting, lots of the conversations and all the presentations have been fantastic, have sort of brought this all together, really, and I see 4 key areas that are going to make our market slightly tough. Now, there's a few stats I'm going to sort of share with you. Now, I won't do them all because there's a big list. So either you're going to sort of have factual paralysis, or you might want to get your pens ready, because it might be sort of business case fodder for how we resource and how we approach things in the future. So the first one is we have a declining numbers in market, and that's led by the demographic decline in talent population. So it was touched on earlier. There's a 10% drop in 18-year-olds in the next 5 years. The next one is the long-term growth in student enrolments is going to plateau this September for the first time, or the second time, I think, in 30 or so years. So we're 4% down on students going into the HEI system. It might even itself out by September, but probably not. So we're going to have less students, less 18-year-olds. We're going to have a decline in the import of students and graduates, potentially from Brexit. We may not, but there's a big question mark in the sector around that. So we're potentially also going to have less of a feeder from key markets to our economy. And the last part is actually about us in the room. There's less grads, they're challenging to attract, and we're all sort of positively saying next year we're going to hire 4.3% more on average. So actually I'm a bit like, oh, that's not the most robust economic model for us to be confident that we're all going to hit targets next year. So in summary, we're going to be a little bit squeezed on supply, and we're going to want a bit more from demand. The second is actually the candidates themselves, and there's been a huge amount of really exciting conversations today about what it means for us as employers or strategists or recruiters, but the candidates are really key in what's going on around us as well. So what they look for, and we did a piece of research with Reed actually about generational variances, and what graduates are looking for now is slightly different. They're looking very much for interest in CPD. They want to understand how their values align to organisations, so the softer, less tangible aspects of a career. They're very, very interested in how they integrate into the wider ecosystem of a business instead of just sitting in a chair and doing a role. So fundamentally, what they're now looking for, if I was to summarise it, is slightly more needy than we might be used to, and actually they need more resource and support. It's also the fact that they're slightly more fickle, and I'm being very negative about an audience here, but they are more likely to adjust their institutional choice, i.e. through clearing, than they ever have been before. And according to the High Flyers research, I think graduates now, where are we, sorry, they're looking at sort of, there's a stat I just wanted to give you, but I can't find it, so I'll have to jump on. I'm very sorry. But in effect, I think 7.1% or something of roles this year were reneged on. So in effect, actually, not only when we hire these people and we think we've got it, we don't know when to turn the tap off because then they don't turn up. So in effect, we have a challenge of their choice and their requirements. And the last one is how they search. So the systems they're using are changing, and the number of platforms they go to are changing, and all this time we're sort of feeling a little bit under pressure to understand what MarTech and what measurements to use. The last one is, it's been touched on again, is actually the skills shortage. So it's the appropriateness of the graduates coming out of our universities at the moment might not be that fit for purpose. And to put that into context, and it's not a comparison, but bear with me, last year in the UK, we sort of had about 253,000 STEM graduates just over come out of our institutions. And China, there were 4.7 million in the same period. Now, evidently, it's a far bigger economy, and we understand that, far bigger population, but they open the equivalent of a university a week. So as we start thinking about our future supply, are we taking into account that we might have to open our sort of look slightly broader than we have previously? So I think, not to be too negative, there's a lot of challenges that are on our sort of agenda in the shorter, mid and long term. And I think, if we were going to go on that, we would effectively all be slightly screwed in what we're doing. But we won't. We have to sort of turn it on its head and talk about the positives, which leads us on into the teach first situation. So actually, when we look at the graduates, their behaviours, their drivers, for all the challenges, some really exciting positive aspects to this. So the candidate experience is infinitely better when they're searching, when they're looking for us, how they can understand our roles, our values. We can communicate with them in a far more positive and exciting way. And because of all the tech and the journeys, we have far more insight about who they are, what drives them, what doesn't drive them, what they're interested in our business. We can share more, so what we can physically share, whether it's experiential, video aspects, video interviews, whatever we're doing, we have far more choice on how we communicate to people. And it's actually easier to stand out. So we used to be very boxed in into how we communicated with people, what channels we had, what options we had. And now, whether you're a big recruiter or a little recruiter, it's actually far more exciting to do that. So behind all of this is the values and the importance of sort of talking about your brand. And before I hand over to Claire, I just want to summarise the Teach First situation. So Teach First has had a fantastic growth journey for the last 13 or so years. The targets were achieved, and that's the green line. And then we come to today, and actually as positive as the growth was the target setting. So what we've now got is a circumstance with the market, and I don't think you're alone in this, the market is no longer big enough to sustain what we're trying to achieve, whether that's 4.3% growth or not. So what we have is a marginal talent deficit. And what Teach First had to do is either raise that blue line, so there's more supply, or we have to work really, really efficiently to make sure we convert every single potential graduate that's coming into contact with them. So this is a little case study of how Teach First went about that and how they took all their insight and strategy and fed it into activation.
Thank you, Richard. I'll do my best to explain that in the short time that we've got to talk to you. So, good afternoon. I'm Claire Ashton, Head of Attraction at Teach First. What that basically means is all of our recruiters that work on campus, off campus, online, run our internship programs, kind of sit within my team. So all of that early pipeline building, as well as the kind of onboarding and getting them to start our program, what we called cultivation, which is a huge issue for us, as Richard highlighted, in terms of reneges on offers and dropouts. So always busy. Teach First are a non-profit organisation. We're an educational charity, if you don't know us. That's who we are and what we do, really. We really try and highlight through our graduate recruitment, I guess, what the problem is as opposed to what the profession of teaching is, because we're trying to do something a bit different. We're basically trying to supplement the kind of existing teaching pipeline, particularly today with the recruitment shortages, with really inspirational, enthusiastic, bright, what we'd call top graduates who perhaps haven't thought about teaching previously or are not thinking about teaching long term, but our program, they do qualify, but is a leadership development program. So what we see as they're kind of building skills and developing as a leader through the experience of teaching in schools that really need the most. So they're generally in quite challenging circumstances. They can be in areas of low social kind of deprivation, or high social deprivation, sorry, and also generally kind of have quite challenging results and economic issues affecting some of the pupils that go there. So we work all across the country and in Wales, and we're basically trying to make something that is really hard and slightly unpopular as attractive as we possibly can, and that's been the basis for everything that we've done and we've built in graduate recruitment and attraction over the last kind of 13, 14 years. So we love a video at Teach First, so I'm going to try and just show you one of our recruitment trailers just to give you an idea about what it is that we do. And if you try and imagine being a graduate who has got a science degree and has been chased by Google and loads of other cool employers, but you come to this presentation and hopefully you leave all your preconceptions aside and you're inspired, and then you want to come and start talking to my team. That's what we're trying to aim for with this type of media. So hopefully it'll be inspiring as well as informative. use the comparison that if you can like hold the attention of a year 10 kind of bottom set on a Friday afternoon and teach them something, you can hold the attention of anybody in a boardroom and, you know, be able to deliver some pretty horrible information. So it's that kind of from classroom to boardroom type kind of feel we're trying to get through in this part of the campaign. Cool. So we are, it depends who you ask. I think last year we were the largest graduate recruiter in the country. I'm not sure that will happen this year. We're looking for about 1,600 graduates to join us. And as I said, we do work with experienced hires as well. So we're very much on campus, but we also have a team of about 10 working in that off-campus marketplace. We're third in the Times Top 100. I'm not saying that just to kind of like show off or anything, but that has been a core part of our strategy to make sure that we are viewed as prestigious and as good an opportunity as any of the more corporate graduate recruiters out there that we're kind of like fighting for space with. So a big kind of focus for us has been on brand building, on having really great marketing materials, on investing in a team that are well skilled and can kind of compel and sell what the opportunity is. So that hopefully is testament of the investment that we've put in over the years. And I think the rundown's in a couple of weeks, so it may not be number 3, it might be a bit lower, but we'll see. So that's what we're doing. And one of the challenges that we have is we obviously have a large team to be able to recruit the number of people that we've got. There's about 50 of us in attraction and marketing. We recruit across the country and abroad from about 120 universities. We have really tangible and quite stringent diversity targets, and it's not tokenistic at all. We really want our teaching workforce to reflect the communities and the schools that we're working in. So something for us that is a challenge is it's a mainly female profession. A couple of years ago we won about 40% male. We really need male role models in schools, and that number is kind of dropping, and I think as the market gets more competitive. We also really want people from all walks of life, ethnicities, backgrounds, to be able to, again, to kind of inspire and enthuse the pupils that we're working with. And those numbers as well haven't been so great, again, as I guess there's more competition and choice out there, and perhaps we're not doing a good enough job really to kind of promote why we want to work with these different kinds of people. So that's definitely a challenge for us. Our growth has been exponential. I think it was about 650% in the last kind of like 7-8 years or so. I joined the organisation in about 2007, so I've been there through this growth as well, and it's just a completely different place to when we first started, which has been amazing to watch. But also I think that again there's been challenges. We're probably on about our 4th, 5th iteration of the graduate recruitment team. What it looks like, it's quite rare to have been there for a while. So very interesting. Definitely every kind of season is not the same with us. Again, more challenges. So the growth in targets, and that's a demand and a need from our schools and from expansion and a push from kind of government, as well as ambition from the board and our trustees as well. So we are kind of handed these numbers, if that makes sense as well. And often you don't get enough time to kind of set your team up or get people in place to help you deliver them. So that's been quite challenging. And regional expansion, it was really cheering to see, I think, earlier on in the day about home students and how many people are not wanting to go to London. But our offer is a blind offer. We basically say we'll place you wherever you're needed most. So that can be in any of the 10 local areas that we work in. And that's people accepting that before they know where they're going. So regional expansion is great because we're working with more schools, but it's, again, definitely harder to kind of sell to a graduate who's got an offer on the table to go to London or to Leeds, and you're telling them that they're going to Blackpool or to Grimsby. It's just not as exciting, is it? So again, that's something else we have to kind of like rebrand and sell, and you know, say you're going to be a pioneer and place people together and build an idea of kind of community and cohort. That's really important to what we do. The STEM challenge, hugely important, I'm sure, for many of you, and again, Richard just highlighted, I think, how that market is just saturated and there's fewer graduates. We again have a mandate from the government as part of our funding to recruit a certain number of STEM teachers. It's around 40%. So again, we're not hitting our targets if we're not getting those type of people in there, and that's all that schools want as well. And we don't pay very well. We don't even tell you what your salary is because it's regional variances, and we're not your employer, the school's your employer. So, but you're looking at around 20k, probably slightly more in London and slightly less outer. Talked about location, and again, the specialisation, like we're almost a broker. We're passing on these graduates to schools and what they might ask you to do or specialise in. You could be, you know, head of department if you start in a school that has, and you're a physicist. You know, we can't tell you if that's going to happen or not. For some people that's great, for others that's absolutely petrifying. So again, this kind of trying to message and market things as opportunities and be really positive. It's always why I'm presenting with a smile constantly when you're talking to graduates about some of these things. But yeah, there's a lot there, but a lot you can switch on its head and turn to an opportunity. So just a brief slide there on ambition. I'm sure I'm overrunning, so I'm not even looking at my notes, but we want to grow to beyond 2,000, and again, that's kind of something that we've talked to the government about doing, and funders and sponsors, so we need to start getting there. We hoped in our early growth plans we'd be there last year, so again, that gives you some idea of kind of the atmosphere of like pressure and speed of growth that we're very much still in at the moment. Okay, so addressing the talent. These are the things that I think have got us to where we are and are part of our long-term kind of focus. So we're really, I've got my notes there, sorry. Yeah, so I've talked to you a bit again about the strategies, selling the problem, high quality marketing, like just trying to be market leading. We used to have in my team's objective something about kind of being world-class graduate recruitment. So like in our appraisals, talk about what have you done that's like world-class, that's like the best. And I think just that aspiration in your team to be the best that you can be kind of is quite driving to kind of, yeah, to get them to be motivated against some of these big targets and challenges. The brand, again, Rich has kind of talked a bit about that as well, but making sure that we're building that across the country at universities, and that we're building that online as well, that we're kind of getting ahead of everything. And you know, you don't always get it right, but the more that you put yourself out there, the more people obviously recognise you, and you get this kind of, I guess, feedback and prestige from being in one of the biggest and most well-recognised, I guess, recruiters. Process, we're still changing that as well. I think, you know, we've just appointed a really greatly named like transformation team to kind of look at this long term and what our process should look like. And, you know, in this age, is our application process too long? Are people moving to more online stuff? Are we lagging behind in that area? So always just thinking about how we can innovate and change with that. And then research as well, like we work closely with kind of Times Top 100, with Trendance. We look at HESA data, like we look at our own data. We've got some really great data monkeys on the team who are just able to kind of spin us out trends about conversion at X university for second years studying MFL or something, and we can use that quickly to then inform strategy. So that's really important to us. Short term, this is some of the work that we did with the SMRS, but these are again just hopefully examples of some quick wins that can, I guess, enhance anybody's kind of process. We looked at segmenting our audience a kind of year or so ago, which it kind of feels like we should have done it ages ago. Really now we have, but like who are the different groups that are applying to us? Who do we want more of? We've kind of identified challenge seekers as a group, a population that we want to grow more of, because they're the kind of people that will come and be successful on the programme, but at the same time they're probably not thinking about teaching. So we think that's a group that we can expand if we can find more of them, because they're definitely not looking for us. Whereas we've identified a group that are kind of visionary teachers who, for the most part, will find us, you know, maybe take a bit of persuading we're the best route, but they will find us and come to us anyway. So segmenting, I think, your pot can help you then target more effectively and know where your areas of growth are. Again, trying to be ahead in kind of like the online experience. A lot of this links to selection, which isn't like my main area of expertise, but we really do want to bring as much of that online as possible. Perhaps looking at a new kind of applicant tracking system as well to support that, so the candidate experience and the online experience are linked in again a very, very slick and effective, and it makes your kind of candidate want to move through your process much quicker. And then, yeah, performance, looking at how people are delivering, how we're delivering, and kind of like rebuilding our metrics and making sure that we're using the best metrics to target and motivate and monitor the performance of our team as well. Okay, oh gosh, we're nearly at time. So just really quickly, I wanted to mention, given like the topics of today as well, we have started running an internship program over the last few years, which is called Insight, which gives students, shockingly, an insight into what our programme is like. So they're placed in a school, they're given the kind of cohort feel, a mandate to teach and to work on a school-wide project. Again, just to kind of highlight another challenge is that like this has been the growth for it. Like for once we went really slow and steady. So we started in 2012 with a small pilot. This year we'll take on, I think, about 230 in 2 different intakes. There is ambition to grow this to 1,000, again, trying to make this funnel bigger. It is quite complex because, again, we're not the employer, we don't work directly with schools, there's relationships to broker, there's CRB checks to do, all this kind of stuff. I'm nearly wrapping up, so it's all right. But yeah, this has been a long journey to kind of get us to where we are today with that, and I think we're still learning, and you know, there's some amazing internship programs that we had this morning, and we're kind of nowhere near kind of as kind of like whizzy and exciting as that. But again, this is hopefully getting students to get an experience of what it actually is like on our grad program, and then changing some of their minds and preconceptions about what Teach First is and about how they can have an impact and accelerate their career later on. We're looking at about 50% of those insights converting at the moment, which isn't great either considering the investment in them. So that's something else we need to work on in getting that number up. So we're going to try out, again, selection pilots in kind of programme offers to try and keep them and get that number up to about 75%, which should hopefully do me favours in getting more budget for it, but also at the same time, you know, again, it's that pipeline that we've already got, trying to make it deliver as much as possible as it can for us. Okay, that was a bit of a whirlwind. Great. I'm going to hand over to Richard now. You're going to talk a bit more in detail about how we work together to face some of these challenges.
I'll be very aware of time, so we'll be brief. But effectively, what Teach First have done is that long 12 to 18-month strategy, and then in sort of 6 to 12 months, they had those actionable projects. And they came to us and said, probably the same as almost all of us would say in this room, is we would love to generate applications and attract loads of really high quality graduates while maintaining our brand, so we do really well in all the surveys and we're front of mind. So it wasn't that different. But what we had to do is, as per my chart at the start, we had to grow that audience somehow. And the challenge that we find as a partner to many recruiters is actually how do you bridge the gap between strategy and insight, and then how do you behave differently on campus or in your advertising. And so what we had done, and again, I won't go through all of these in detail, but we had taken the outcomes of the projects that Teach First had run, so the segmentation work, for example, and we had overlaid or introduced technology or tactics or data. So in effect, when they take the segmentation project and the ATS, and traditionally you strategically plan your campus activity on legacy, you overlay market data and you say, well, what's the future supply by subject, by behaviour, by type? So we started really looking at where people would be and redefining things. And the tangible outcomes of, in effect, what was a 6-month project of those 4 little areas were that we put the brand in front of 9.5 million opportunities to see. So second and third year university students, in effect, targeted by the strategies. And we ran both direct response and brand messaging. So one was a very strict objective to drive through to application, hard application, while the other was to make sure that we were actually sort of having a presence, a softer presence about brand values and more of the sort of video material that would build a relationship with candidates. The outcome was in about 6 weeks, 1,900 conversions came through the campaign, just using the outputs of those projects. So actually saying, how do we behave differently with this information, and what do we adapt year on year to change that? So very tangible, very real results, but effectively using information that probably most of us would have in our business in some form at some level. So to wrap up, really, I think there's a lot to get in here, and I appreciate that, but what we really highly recommend is ensuring that actually, as this market gets busier, more competitive, harder for us, for all the reasons we've touched on today, it's still an exciting one, and we mustn't shy away from actually using our mission and our purpose in what we do and how we talk to candidates. It is fundamentally important for candidates they find someone that is aligned to their values. So I think we really need to spend some time understanding our own organisational values, and if they're not there, they're not, just develop them and understand them and do some research. Then, in effect, create engagement that does that. Now, things like job boards are very critical, and we use a lot of them as an organisation, but they're never going to make someone cry, or they're never going to make someone laugh, or they're never going to make someone desperately want to join your scheme. Whereas if you're at Empower and you're making a cocktail with 18 people you're going to work with, that's building a relationship. So we really stress that you start thinking about the messaging and the channels you use. And just really, the last 3 about being brave. You know, Teach First made a very different strategy in the last 6 to 12 months that has led to dividends. So we really encourage the measurement and the changing of your strategies, and just doing it piecemeal, try new channels, be braver, because in effect that is how we believe you'll win that graduate race. So thank you very much.
Thank you.